Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. I have a special treat for you. This booster is from a very special booster box. Now, if you're not aware of what Iconic Masters is, this is part of the ill-fated Masters series of expansions for Magic the Gathering. This one came out near the tail end. In fact, this set was the beginning of the end for the Master sets, because originally Master sets were designed around the concept of serving formats, like modern, eternal, things like that, right? Versus these Master sets, which have a particular theme as opposed to a format they serve. So the theme of this is Iconic Masters. Originally, they tried to sell it to us as if it was like the best of the last 25 years of Magic. There was some miscommunications there. Really, with Iconic, what they mean is just iconic creature types like angels and hydras. So this set didn't get a fantastic reception, I'll be real. So I wouldn't be calling a regular booster of this special, but this booster is definitely special. It was sent out to me by a fellow who got an entire misprint booster box. We've actually opened boosters like this on the channel before, and there have indeed been multiple rares. One of the packs had 3 rares, one of the packs had 2 rares. Now, bear in mind, I'm not talking about foil rares or anything like that. I'm talking about actual misprint boosters that have additional rares, more than they're supposed to. Now, it's not guaranteed this one will, but it comes from the same box. So let us dive in and give it the boosted awareness treatment. Even though it is all about the spicy, juicy rares from this, we are going to take our time to appreciate all of the cards in the pack, because that's how I roll here. So we're starting out with Sustainer of the Realm. 2 white and 2 for a 2/3 flying angel. When Sustainer of the Realm blocks, it gets +0/+2 until end of turn. You may break her shield, but you'll never break her spirit. It's a perfectly serviceable angel. I mean, this is a card from way back. Obviously, this only makes it in because it is indeed an angel. This is not, by today's power level standards, this is an absolute garbage level card, right? You're not going to be excited about this. The artwork is nice, though. You've got an angel. It looks like she's just kind of either leapt off a wall or she's just sort of flying in front of her. The legs off to the side, I'm not sure exactly what the deal is supposed to be, but you can see that this angel has a very defensive role from just the nature of the stance in front of this kind of crumbling city wall and the gigantic shield. That's the vibe it gives me. Let's see what's next. We've got Thought Scour. All right, this is actually a pretty decent card. 1 blue for an instant that says target player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into their graveyard, and then you draw a card. Flavor text says, as you inject the viscous vitae into the brainstem, don't let the spastic moaning bother you. It will soon become music to your ears. And that is attributed to Stitcher Giraffe. Now, Stitcher Giraffe is somebody who basically creates zombies on Innistrad. And on Innistrad, zombies can be made out of, like, reanimated bodies or created as Frankenstein monsters. And the Frankenstein monster style ones are basically this kind of a concept, the blue ones. The artwork is absolutely just horrifying, let's be real. I mean, look at what's going on here. Would you want something like this to happen to you, where they're getting right up into your brain? Like, I mean, you can see right here, as it's talking about, as you inject the viscous vitae, you've got this right here, which presumably is injecting it directly in this guy's brain, while a clawed hand holds him still. And clearly from the look of his face, he's been struggling with this as well. But the idea that after a while, you just start to enjoy the sounds of the subject screaming, that is definitely a, like, very mad scientist vibe. There's a lot of flavor to this card. And for 1 mana, getting to mill your opponent 2 while replacing itself is not too shabby at all. That's not a bad card. Then we've got Vent Sentinel. 1 red and 3 for a 2/4 Defender Elemental. This is from the Zendikar block, if I'm not mistaken. Pay 1 red and 1, tap it. Vent Sentinel deals damage to target player equal to the number of creatures with Defender you control. This was when this kind of ability felt a little newer and weirder, because it had been less time since they had changed the whole wall rule and started slapping Defender on studs. For the longest time, Defender didn't really feel like it was a thing in Magic the Gathering. It was scattered here or there, but there weren't like almost like a tribal theme feel to it, where it treats it the same way as creature types, you know? And the flavor text says, Zendikar fortifies itself against the great threat making sentries of sky, sea, and stone. That's a pretty cool concept. This is referencing the time where the Eldrazi Titans were ravaging Zendikar, and so parts of the plane itself rose up against them. I dig that. And the artwork shows, obviously, this sort of like magmatic lava elemental that's made out of living, flowing lava, and at the same time, like the cooled magma chunks. That's crazy how lava turns from this glowing red hot stone into this black kind of weird porous bubbly material. It's pretty funky though. Let's move on. We've got Wild Size. This is from the first Ravnica block. 1 green and 2 for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. Draw a card. And the flavor text says 2 times the size, 4 times the smell. And you can see the Wild Size is this beast that the goblin is riding. It would have normally been like this size, but it's just getting like bucked up into a larger... Oh, no, wait, never mind. I've got it completely reversed. That's hilarious. You can clearly see it's actually the goblin who's been Wild Size, and it's the Boru struggling with it. I actually have seen this artwork before, and I always assumed that this boar was smaller, and this boar had been made larger, and this boar just didn't have a rider or something, and this guy was choosing to ride the wildest. But now that I look at the artwork closely, I can see that clearly this is a regular-sized goblin riding a regular-sized boar. This is also a regular-sized boar with a massively wild-sized goblin to the point where, like, he has to have a crook in his knee there to stop his feet from touching the ground. All right, that's nice. That's one of the reasons I like going through these packs like this, too, is that sometimes there's details I haven't noticed because I don't spend as much time stopping to appreciate them when I'm not sharing with other people. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to enjoy Magic cards on another level, my friends. I appreciate you being here. 1 black and 4 for a 3/5 Rot Feaster Maggot. Now that is an evocative name. When Rot Feaster enters the battlefield, exile target creature card from a graveyard. You gain life equal to that card's toughness. And the flavor text says, is it the top of the food chain or the bottom? That's an interesting question where it's like, okay, well, hold on. Like, it feeds on basically carrion and leftovers, but it's also gigantic enough to take living creatures into that state. So really, like, what are we dealing with? That is some cool flavor. And the idea behind the card, like this Rot Feaster shows up and this maggot like burrows into the graveyard and just eats one of the creatures that's already in there. That's all right. That makes sense. Flavorfully, it ties together. Couldn't tell you what set this originates from, though. I don't actually know off the top of my head. After that, we got Ghoulish Spectacle. I know this one's set on Ravnica. So this is 2 black and 2 for an instant that says destroy target non-artifact creature. Its controller puts a number of cards equal to that creature's power from the top of his library into the graveyard. So basically, they get milled for a number of cards equal to the creature's power. The flavor text says, watch people flock to a murder scene, then tell me we're not all a little sick in the head. And that's Jury, proprietor of the Jury Review, and that would be a Rakdos individual, I think. But the artwork is pretty straightforward and obviously lets you know exactly what's going on. You have a scenario where there's like a watchman out and it's like, okay, look, nothing to see here, citizens. And it's like, what are you talking about? That looks like Gallagher took a watermelon to a wall, buddy. And then you've got what's left of the guy just laying there. That's some pretty intense artwork, let's be real. I do like that the whole card ties together pretty well in that the cards getting milled would be the trauma of seeing this happen. This is something that's done to send a message, and the message has been received. Moving on, we've got Fury Charm. 1 red and 1 for an instant. Choose 1. Destroy target artifact. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. Or remove 2 time counters from target permanent or suspended card. So this comes from the Time Spiral block. Suspended cards are cards that have been essentially temporarily exiled and will come back in a number of turns equal to the counters on them. So this allows you to speed up a suspended card's entry onto the battlefield by 2 turns. So this is a half-decently versatile card. For 2 mana, having the option to boost a creature and give it trample, destroy an artifact, or remove time counters or like from either permanents in play or suspended cards, that's actually not too shabby. It's not really strong. The artwork is pretty straightforward. You can see 2 hands reaching out, and in them they hold a charm. I presume that when you go to use the charm, you break it. It's a funky concept. Let us move on. Seeker of the Way. 1 white and 1 for a 2/2 human warrior. It's got prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Seeker of the Way gains lifelink until end of turn. So just by casting one non-creature spell, this is a 3/3 lifelink creature. That's not too shabby. I don't know where my destiny lies, but I know it isn't here. And you can see a monk. He's journeying away from the spires of Jeskai. He's leaving his homeland behind to seek knowledge on his own kind of spiritual journey. It's got that solitary feel to it because you don't see, he's all alone. He's all alone and he's distanced from everything that he knows. I enjoy the flavor of this. This is pretty cool. And the card itself isn't too shabby either. Let us move on, my friends. What do we have next here? We have the Phantom Taiga. 1 green and 2 for a 1/0 that actually is effectively a 3/2 because it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. If damage would be dealt to Phantom Tiger, prevent that damage, remove a +1/+1 counter from Phantom Tiger. So these cards showed up in Judgment, if I'm not mistaken, definitely in that block overall. And there was a cycle of these different guys here. Now, they redid the artwork, and I really, really enjoyed the artwork here, because this is a cat spirit, right? This is a tiger spirit. And you see it stalking through this kind of like, it's almost like it's stalking through a little alien cornfield. You know what I mean? And by alien, I just mean from a plane that does not feel like Earth, as opposed to like outer space aliens. That's not something I really want to see in Magic. No ET, thank you very much. Pretty straightforward concept though, right? Like, it's a spirit, so when you damage it, you can only damage part of its spirit stuff instead of vanquish it entirely, which is why instead of taking a bunch of damage, you just remove 1 +1/+1 counter from it. It's an alright concept. What's cool about these is that if you find a way to give them a permanent like toughness booster, like if you have an enchantment out that says all your creatures get +1 toughness, then every time this would take damage, you prevent the damage and remove a +1/+1 counter, but you can't remove the +1/+1 counter, but that's not required to prevent the damage. So what happens is, as long as you can boost his toughness at all with a piece of equipment and enchantment, then there's no way to take this guy out with damage, which is pretty cool. And again, I do definitely enjoy the artwork on this. It's got a funky vibe, man. You could see this being like your spirit animal showing up one night out of nowhere, leading you off into the forest on a crazy journey. After that, we've got Guardian Idol. 2 mana for an artifact, enters the battlefield tapped. It taps to add a colorless to your mana pool, and you can pay 2 mana to make it become a 2/2 golem artifact creature until end of turn. Now, this makes perfect sense from a sort of like fantasy standpoint. You'd see this in Dungeons and Dragons campaigns and movies and stuff, where there are these giant, what looks like just statues and decoration, but at a certain point they animate and come to existence to protect a treasure hoard, or like to punish interlopers, or in some cases, like maybe in some sort of like made up religious sort of building, they might, okay, get those apostates or whatever, that sort of thing, you know? And the artwork is pretty serviceable. It's nothing super exciting, but it definitely transmits the concept they're going for. You've got this gigantic statue that's standing there with both of its hands resting on a sword, but it's in like a state of readiness as opposed to just leaning at ease. So you totally do get the vibe of this is a statue that will guard a place, all right? Not too shabby. And I mean, as a mana rock that also animates, this is not a terrible card. Moving on. Oh, we're moving into the uncommons now. If there are any additional rares, my friends, they will replace slots in the uncommons. So let's hope that we get to see some goodness. 1 red and 3 for Surreal Memoir. This is return an instant card at random from your graveyard to your hand for a sorcery speed. And it's got Rebound. And Rebound is if you cast this spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast this card from exile without paying its mana cost. So Rebound, that was from the original Zendikar block. I think this was probably Rise of the Eldrazi here, I'm imagining. Now in the artwork you can see a crazy Eldrazi beast with its own eye hovering above its claw, I guess. Maybe that's supposed to be is this supposed to be like some sort of keepsake? I'm not 100%. The Surreal Memoir, the artwork is definitely surreal. You've got an Eldrazi with crazy tentacles, and I picture it as that's its eye looking into another dimension, or it has some extra level of power where it can draw the card back from your grave. It can basically restore lost knowledge to you. However, it's random. Like, you don't get to control what you get back. It is chosen at random. And that's a very red feel, you know? Returning cards from your graveyard is more of a green ability in most cases, but with this, it totally feels right. Let's move on. Azorius Chancery. Okay, this is part of the original Ravnica bounce land cycle. So it enters the battlefield tapped. When Azorius Chancery enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand. And it taps for a white and a blue. So this is an interesting choice for mana fixing in that it does tap for 2 mana. It guarantees you both of your 2 colors if you're playing 2 colors, but it does set you back a land drop, which does, and it comes into play tapped. So it slows you down, but it also sets you back by a land drop, which could be an issue, but can also be turned to your advantage if you have lands you would want to replay or a reason to want lands in your hand. So the whole cycle of these lands are pretty decent. The artwork's pretty straightforward as well. This is inside a Azorius sort of law temple, as it's Ravnica's a little bit weird, but yeah, this is definitely some sort of like vaulted lawmaker's chamber. Let us move on, my friends. Oh, that's 2 uncommons, and we're into the rare. Yay! It is a misprint booster. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. All right, sweet. 3 green and X for Genesis Wave. Reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of permanent cards with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put into the graveyard into the battlefield into your graveyard. So this card, depending on how much mana you spend, can be just absolutely crazy, putting a ton of permanents out. The concept is supposed to be a massive wave of green energy that just causes a bunch of growth or things to appear, and I guess you harness it for your own purposes. I'll be real, the artwork has never done it for me. You can clearly see a bunch of like green energy arcing up off of it, but it's not clear at all what's going on in this artwork. You can't really tell what's being created. It just looks like a bunch of dark shadows kind of in a weird shaped forest with green energy coming up off it, like a beacon flowing up. So for me, the artwork is a miss, but I really like the card. So there should be another rare behind this, and it is, yeah! Anger of the Gods. So this is 2 red and 1 for a sorcery. Anger of the Gods deals 3 damage to each creature. If a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. There was no reason to pray. This was already an act of the gods. That's intense, man. The concept behind this card, this is from original Theros block, is that the gods are angry, so they essentially rain hellfire down upon you. Look at this poor little guy here trying to shelter under a tree. How terrifying would that be to know that like your gods are angry at you and they're just raining destruction down on the world. And the idea, there's no point in praying, this is already a response from the gods. That is super intense. I absolutely love it. What do we got next? We got our foil is a Dragon Bell Monk. All right, 1 white and 2 for a 2/2 Vigilance Human Monk. It's got prowess, which we already talked about. The flavor text says he spent years training his eyes and ears to detect the subtle signs of a dragon's approach. That's pretty cool, actually. The idea of somebody who is specialized in telling when a dragon is approaching, even before you can sight it on the horizon or anything, he knows these the little subtle signs where it's just like, you know how animals can tell before there's going to be some kind of natural disaster and they take off? Similar kind of concept. The artwork is very straightforward. You've got a monk holding a mace kind of thing that looks like it's got a yo-yo on the end of it. A big old, it's his yo-yo stick. You got all the mountains in the background. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. Ultimately disappointing after looking at some rares, but what are you going to do? And then we've got a beast token to finish it up. You got your 4/4 Zendikar Beastie here. So thanks for coming by, my friends. Let me know what you think about Misprints boosters. It's so cool to get an extra rare. I just love that extra level of mystery it adds to the opening because you don't know. It's like it's from the same box, but will this one have an extra rare? And it sure did. I want to give a big thank you to my patrons and channel members for supporting my channel here. It does mean a lot to me. Thanks everybody for coming by, and I will see all of you lovely people very soon.